My name is Kinneret, and I'm the lead research community officer on the WMF research team. Welcome to this month's research showcase. Showcases are, as you probably know, our monthly convenings organized by our team to recognize and share recent research on or about the Wikimedia projects. For those of you joining live, as always, we welcome you to ask questions of the speakers in the YouTube chat. We'll monitor the channel and we'll pass the questions on to the speakers during the Q&A sessions. We also kindly ask that attendees follow the friendly space and universal code of conduct. A couple of announcements before we get started today. First of all, in case you haven't seen, the 12th edition of Wiki Workshop has been announced. It will be held virtually on Wednesday and Thursday, May 21st and 22nd, 2025. This is the first year we are experimenting with expanding the workshop from 1 to 2 days. We hope that this format will allow for deeper engagement and better pacing across both days. This is a one-time change for 2025, and based on what we learned from this year, we'll make informed decisions for future events. So we look forward to your contributions in this upcoming May and to make this year's workshop a great success. And stay tuned for further details on the research mailing list and for registration information that will come in the coming months. The second announcement is that I would like to remind everyone that our research community has many helpful resources on MetaWiki. If you look up research : and index, you will find many great resources. Specifically, I want to invite you to visit research : people, which is our newly revitalized people directory page, where you can add your information and find many other people in the research community. And also research : events, where you can find information about events, and please add any events that you're attending that are related to Wikimedia research. I hope you find these resources helpful. With that, I will pass it on to my colleague, Miriam, who will introduce the speakers and theme for this month.
Thank you so much, Kinneret. Hello, everyone. My name is Miriam. I'm a researcher at the Wikimedia Foundation, and I am very honored to introduce the November 2024 Research Showcase. So today we'll talk about languages. And most of you know probably that with more than 300 language editions, Wikipedia hosts content in more languages than any other large online platform. And this beautifully rich multilingual content is accessed by billions around the world and widely reused to train AI models. But the size and type of content varies substantially across language edition. Of course, we all know English Wikipedia is the largest Wikipedia and the most widely studied, with more than almost 7 million articles, while, for example, one of the youngest Wikipedia, Bajau Sama, that was launched in August this year, only has 227 articles as of today. And so beyond variability in size, each language edition being independently governed by its own peer production community comes with its own social, cultural, and technical context and barriers. And understanding these contexts and the mechanisms that make different language communities thrive is crucial to ensure their sustainability and the production of high-quality multilingual content. And so today we're going to look at this problem. We're going to look at what helps and hinders the growth of different language versions of Wikipedia, learning from Ethiopian and Indian language communities. So we're going to have two presentations today. In our first presentation, Sejal Khatri will present a comparative analysis of the social and cultural factors of three somehow similar Indian language Wikipedia editions: Malayalam, Marathi, and Kannada. And we talk about how these factors play a role in increasing or decreasing engagement of contributors. Sejal is a professional UX researcher with experience across academia and industry, focused on building accessible and inclusive user-facing technologies. Over the years, she's contributed to impactful projects like Humaniki, Wikimedia Gender Diversity Dashboard, Wiki Education Dashboard, a lot of a tool for tracking Wikipedia contributions, and Google Notebook LLM. She is currently exploring her interest in developing tools to support informal learning about nature and the environment. So this is for our first presentation. Our second project will be presented by Helena Hailu-Negato. Helena will talk about the technical and knowledge access challenges faced by under-resourced language contributors of Wikipedia, focusing on 3 Ethiopian languages: Afan Oromo, Amharic, and Tigrinya. Helena is a PhD student at the University of California, Berkeley. She finished her undergrad in Addis Ababa University in Ethiopia in electrical and computer engineering and received her Master's of Science from UC Berkeley in 2023. Her research interest broadly lies in the interaction of AI and HCI, with a focus on making usable tools accessible to end users. She's currently looking into making NLP tools usable and accessible for low-resource languages. And she's also interested in the impact of AI on society, and specifically how it affects global majority countries and communities. After each of these wonderful talks, we'll have 10 minutes for discussion. We are happy to take your question in the YouTube chat. My colleague Diego will monitor the chat and relay the questions to us during the Q&A. I think with this is all I have to say for the introduction. So let's pass it on to Sijal, who will kick us off with the first presentation.
Thank you, Miriam. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Can you all see my screen okay? Okay. Thank you, everyone. And let's dive into this. So we spoke with active contributors from 3 Indian language Wikipedias to explore their experiences, that is, the positives, the challenges, and their perspectives on what other communities are doing well or could improve. Our findings reveal that social context shapes these Wikipedia communities, and stay tuned to see how. So, as Miriam said, we know that there are more than 300 languages, and English Wikipedia having more than 7 million articles. We are kind of shifting the focus in this conversation and looking at some of these underrepresented languages. We know that there are a lot of these languages online due to systemic barriers. Although languages spoken by minority of the population are frequently underrepresented, many widely spoken languages have been underrepresented too. For example, Indian languages with extreme historical and cultural significance face challenges in digital presence. These often become site of interventions by governments and NGOs that operate basic in the way of basic research to guide their actions. We see a need and an opportunity here. Studying these communities can help overcome some of these challenges that result in them being underrepresented. It can help us better inform the interventions as well as help advance equity in peer production. Specifically, we selected 3 language communities. Marathi from the state of Maharashtra. It has around 83 million native speakers. It's coded in green here. Kannada from the state of Karnataka, which has 44 million native speakers, coded in blue. And Malayalam from the state of Kerala, that has around 35 million native speakers. It's coded here in pink. All these languages, to Miriam's point, they have less than 100,000 articles. And it does not map, as you can see, to the very large native speaker population that they have. We look at these languages because they are only officially spoken in 3 neighboring states of India, which allows us to narrow down a lot of the variables that have traditionally been considered influential in the trajectories of these peer production communities. And I'll talk about them more later in the presentation. We notice that although their Wikipedia language editions share the same digital infrastructure at large, they still have very different outcomes. Here's what I mean. We look at the potential contributor base for these Wikipedias that's signified by the device readers. In this, we see that Marathi Wikipedia has 2 times the number of readers compared to Malayalam Wikipedia, and hence twice the contribution potential. Please note that this data was collected between Jan 2016 and November 2019 and is not representative of these communities today. But despite the lower readership, Malayalam Wikipedia has more than twice the number of content pages created compared to Marathi Wikipedia. This is what caught our attention and compelled us to understand why. Why is that? As far as we can deduce, the success of Malayalam in maintaining engagement does not appear to be attributable to factors such as internet availability, freedom of speech, an established tradition of encyclopedias and understanding of other languages, all the factors described important in previous work. Although there is a high literacy rate among Malayalam speakers, along with a high human development index rating, the difference is overwhelmed by Kerala's much smaller population. So we wonder and ask what enables Malayalam Wikipedia community to thrive in engaging potential contributors compared to other Indian language Wikipedias. We identify 3 levels of explanation, highlighting factors more prominent in Malayalam Wikipedia compared to other Indian language Wikipedias. One was that Malayalam Wikipedia community had a greater affinity with social context. Malayalam contributors were found leveraging institutional collaborations, such as Kerala School Wiki Initiative that was started in 2009. It was a scaled down version of Malayalam Wikipedia that was introduced in schools to promote collaborative learning. Another interesting thing, Malayalam contributors mentioned having a high influence and effective connections to Kerala media. That goes to show that awareness has not been a challenge for this community. It's much more in harmony with its ecosystem. The state also had relatively lower gender and caste hierarchies and a strong participation in free knowledge and open source movement. One of the Malayalam editors said, "I'm a free software activist and enthusiast, and I do like volunteer things because I know this is needed for us." This social cohesion led to an increased Wikipedia awareness and a healthier flow of contributors, paving the way for an inclusive and positive governance. What we mean by that is Malayalam community had embraced decentralized administration with 4 to 5 active admins at the time we interviewed them. 4 to 5 admins, though might be perceived as a limitation, it still reflects a better activity and distribution of power compared to the other 2 Wikipedias that we studied, the Marathi and the Kannada Wikipedia. Furthermore, we noticed that Malayalam adopting inclusive policies, such as allowing its editors to utilize loan words, making content creation more accessible for contributors. This, in turn, paved the way for a more supportive day-to-day environment for contributors. Community members, admins, and editors alike all had a shared understanding of the goals, which was, in Malayalam's case, to improve the quality of the articles, demonstrating a strong sense of community identity. Senior editors were seen to follow good faith practices. For example, one of them said, "We have a policy. Don't bash any editors. Never discourage an editor who's coming to edit Malayalam. If somebody who has access to technology, that person is a gem to us." Hence demonstrating the value that the entire community places on newcomers, which might also suggest that they'd be more supportive and helpful in their early days. Another interesting thing we learned that because of the social cohesion and more inclusive governance, there were less reports of conflicts in the Malayalam community, which also suggested a lower misuse of power, such as banning community members. Finally, we found that Malayalam may have had a more balanced contributor base of technical as well as content contributors. For example, Marathi Wikipedia member pointed out the lack of Twinkle, which is an anti-vandalism tool, and WikiLoves, a feature that's in Wikipedia to encourage editor engagement. Both of these tools are available in larger Wikipedias. On the contrary, these concerns were less apparent in the Malayalam conversations, hinting that they might not have sufficient technical support that might hinder and create barriers for participation. So, what does this lead to? We see that Malayalam's social environment fosters a virtuous flow, enabling a thriving community. We notice the leftmost block in this flowchart. It says that there's more affinity between community goals and macro level social environment, which in turn leads to more volunteer resources for effective community governance. That leads to less reliance on strong hierarchical community governance, in turn creating less barriers to contribution. This includes rules, conflicts, unsatisfactory conflict resolution, and harassment, allowing more contributors, more contributions, higher quality content, etc. We call this a virtuous flow for driving participation and engagement. On the contrary, with Marathi and Kannada Wikipedias that often struggled in maintaining the engagement, they required involvement of paid labor, resources, and organizations. Contrary to the expectations, we noticed that these involvements or interventions, they might actually reinforce some of the hierarchical governance that further limits the participation and experimentation in these communities. We call this the vicious cycle, hindering participation and engagement. While Malayalam Wikipedia thrives due to its supportive environment and inclusive policies, one notable challenge across all the three communities that we studied, including Marathi and Kannada Wikipedias, is the imposition of premature quality standards. This can discourage newcomers, especially women editors, who may be more averse to conflict, reflecting on how such practices may impact participation could be valuable for all communities as well as the Wikimedia Foundation. So, how do we best support underrepresented language Wikipedia editions? We suggest we should seek to promote affinities between Wikimedia Foundation and specific social, cultural, and political contexts. What could this mean? This could mean understanding that certain cultural contexts may have more or less political, um, political or cultural resonance with the Wikimedia movement. So, promoting partnerships and connecting with existing institutions such as schools, like we saw in the case of Malayalam Wikipedia, connecting with local schools and encouraging and fostering that volunteer attitude amongst the youth, connecting with NGOs and understanding what are some bigger questions we can ask, and working with the government to create policies that make sense for that context. Designing policies that balance contributor accessibility, content standards, and reader needs, allowing flexibility such as the use of loan words when needed. So that means keep asking why, to seek more fundamental explanation. Yes, we know that there is gender disparity at the day-to-day level, but why is that happening? What are the policies that the admins of these communities have reinforced? Okay, why are the admins of these communities reinforcing that policies? What's the broader context? How do we actually create interventions at that level by doing these partnerships? And lastly, money is not an answer. It may not be an answer, as it can reinforce problematic dynamics within these communities. We're not saying that that's something that should be avoided, but maybe used in a more formal or structured way by following these other recommendations. Finally, I'd thank you all for listening, and I'd like to acknowledge my co-authors, some of them in this call, from the Community Data Science Collective Lab at the University of Washington and Northwestern University, whose support made this research possible. I'd also like to thank the University of Washington's Communications Department and US National Science Foundation for financial support for this project. And lastly, for Wikimedia Foundation for inviting me and allowing me to share this talk with you all. Do we take Q&A now, or?
Yes, Tejal, thank you so much for the fascinating presentation. While we wait for the room to formulate their questions, I think we have at least one question from YouTube, Diego.
Yes. Abraham is asking the following question. Did you compare in some way the quality of articles between the different languages?
We did not compare the quality or any other quantitative metric for these communities. We did hear some of the community members, especially Malayalam community members, feeling more confident about the quality of their articles as compared to the Marathi community admins who didn't seem as confident.
Thank you. We have more questions. So Miriam, should I proceed with the other question?
Please.
Yes. So we have some congratulations for you from the audience, and also a question that says, were the articles in Malayalam, Marathi, or Kannada that you found to be much more through high quality than the more popular language versions like English? And there's more people asking about quality. So basically, there's a question here about the relationship between quality and also the comparison with the English. But if you you already answered that you haven't measured quality, but maybe if you have some thoughts around this topic.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't follow.
Yeah, let me repeat. So let me read the question exactly. Were there articles in Malayalam or Marathi or Kannada that you found to be much more high quality than the more popular language versions like English? So basically, if people is choosing some of this language to read some of these in these languages because they are better quality than if you read in English. I think that's the question.
No, we didn't explore that. Also, we also found that these readers, they may or may not be reading on English Wikipedia, depending on their comfort with these languages. And so, a comparison between English Wikipedia and a local language Wikipedia might not be as relevant for these localized Wikipedia readers. I don't know, Mako, Erin, you want to add anything to that?
No,
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I mean, I would just emphasize what you said in terms of the comparison between the two. I mean, my reading is that like people definitely did talk about. I mean, that was a thing that we discussed a little bit in potential limitations, but the reality is that at least the people that we talked to for the study seem to be pretty consistent, like in terms of their assessment, their relative assessment of the relative strength of Malayalam in this regard. So.
Okay, thank you. There's no more question. There's a lot of comments and congratulations for you, but no more questions so far. So Miriam, if you want to proceed with
Thank
your
you,
room.
Diego. We have Pablo has a question from the room.
Yeah, sure. Well, first thanks for this presentation. Like I really love the topic, and I particularly find like very relevant this finding about the premature optimization, you know, like how this high standard expectation from English Wikipedia might affect the natural growth of new language editions. I think this is very relevant. And knowing that also like people in the room here have done like extensive work on governance in Wikipedia, laws of oligarchy and so on. I'm wondering, like, I guess this is not the purpose of this study, but still, like, how can English Wikipedia benefit or learn from these much more experimental language editions, and how can we improve major editions from the findings of these minors? I'm thinking about practical examples that can be inspired from your research.
I mean, even within, I mean, we didn't explore this. So you're asking how can English Wikipedia learn from these underrepresented language communities? I think one of the things that we explored is the broader contribution base for English, which is probably more global than the more localized contribution base of these Wikipedias. And that's one of the reasons why we focused on these 3 Wikipedias, because they are only officially spoken in these 3 states in India. That allowed us to narrow the scope of all the other external variables that have been studied: freedom of speech, access to internet. So having all those barriers, common barriers and challenges, why do these 3 Wikipedias have different levels of engagement? When it comes to extracting insights from these 2 English Wikipedias, I'm kind of struggling because it's more global, and so it does operate in all these different social contexts, and people might have different set of motivations editing on the English Wikipedia. Yeah, sorry, I'm not exactly sure how we can extract the insights. Maybe see if Mako and Aaron have.
No, I mean, I think that I'm struggling with it in similar ways. I mean, one challenge with English is that, like, I mean, and which is true of like like a number of pluricentric languages, right? Is that like part of like in designing this study, we specifically selected for communities that wouldn't have this pluricentric component because we were trying to understand things related to broader kind of like social context. And so having many different social contexts which are mixing together, like is going to like both lead to, I think, some pretty complicated interactions, which like and I think also with likely privilege, like I think part of the prediction would be that it might privilege certain communities within like certain communities within the pluricentric language group, right? So we might expect, I don't know, that if it's English, that there's certain groups of English speakers that might have more like affinities, right? Cultural and social affinities, potentially, right? Or that there would be like potential for like conflict between the different kinds of affinities in the way. I mean, I think the problem is much harder in a context like English, right? The number of so yeah. I mean, it's an interesting thing to think through. It's actually not a question that I think I've ever considered here, but I think that we specifically designed to like we had a sense that these would complicate aspects of the argument here in a way that affected the design of the study to try to remove them. And I think that it's a good question, but I think it's, yeah, I mean, other than to say like, it's a good question and I think it's complicated, I don't know what I would, I don't know how much more insight I have.
Thank you. I think we have Caroline next.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thanks so much for the talk. You mentioned that in addition to things like social support, that tooling was a reoccurring theme that came up with like the more engaged language community also having access to more tools. I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit more about these tools, like were these tools that were specifically related to things like language or translation, or were they tools more related to like repetitive or boring tasks, or just any other detail you could provide?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have two examples for you. We did see, we are not sure that Malayalam actually has these tools. We didn't go in ourselves and look up the tools that Malayalam has access to. But the fact that the community felt more confident in the technical infrastructure that they have, Malayalam brought up having a more balanced contributor base of technical contributors and non-technical contributors, which was interesting because our premise was that, okay, this Wikipedia shares, all these three Wikipedias share the same digital infrastructure, and why do they have different outcomes? But it turns out that you do need technical contributors at local level too, to maybe help with things like translation that might be lost in translation between these different. So two examples of tools. One was WikiLove was a tool that was brought up by the Marathi contributor, as I mentioned during the presentation, which is, I believe, a tool to reinforce or it's kind of pat on your back when you do something good. And that was kind of an engagement tool that we found missing in Marathi. Besides the engagement and the anti-vandalism tool that I mentioned, there's this other interesting set of tools that Kannada members mentioned missing, which was the lack of accurate calculations of the number of edits that you have made for formatted text. So let's say if you have used a formatted text in your article, like a table, in Kannada, at the time we were doing this research, there was a bug that won't count those edits. And that was kind of directly affecting the motivation of this participant we spoke to, who was more excited about increasing the number of counts. So I want to like increase my number of edits. But if I have contributed a massive table with 10 columns and 100 rows, and it just says 0 edits, that's what kind of takes them aback. And they mentioned challenges working with the active editors. Again, might have had to do with something being lost in translation, where the active editors were not as reciprocative or responsive to their request to make these amends and make these corrections.
I would just emphasize that I mean I agree with everything. I mean I think everything that Sejal said is like 100%. But I think that like in some ways that I think that the important lesson to take away from this analysis is that it actually like the specific issues that they were faced at the time in which we talked to them may or may not like exist today. Like the point forward and the big difference here was that within the Malayalam community, they had a strong set of like basically technical participants that came from a strong set of connections that they had built to the local like free and open source software community, right? And so when they faced particular kinds of problems, they had resources within their community to address whatever those particular things, and they felt empowered to do it, right? So I'd say the lesson to take away is not like this is the next tool that you need to build, right? It's more like focus higher up the chain in terms of building those partnerships with like more technical organizations or technical institutions within the community, right? Like that's sort of like one, like it's the look further up that flow or something like that, right? But I mean that is to say, I think that those are there is still useful information there about the specific challenges that these communities were facing as well, and that's also documented in the paper. So.
Thank you so much, Sajal. Thank you, Meiko, also for expanding. Wonderful presentation. This is also this discussion on tools is a nice segue for the next presentation, because Helena might tell us a little bit more about tools and especially translation tools. So Helena, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, and we're gonna go to Ethiopian languages.
Yes. Okay, you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I just want to start by saying that I'm so excited to be sharing this space with Sajal and co-authors for two reasons. One, I just realized as she was presenting that we actually cite your paper in our paper that I'm about to present. So it's so exciting to make those connections in real life. And two, because I think our talks will contrast in a very nice way to highlight the nuances in the non-English Wikipedia world and how contextual each of these experiences are. So with that, I will be starting my talk on a need finding work that we did with my advisors, Professor John Kenny and Professor Sarah Chasins from UC Berkeley on low resource languages and online knowledge repositories. So I'm going to do a motivational, I'm going to go through a few motivation or background slides, but a lot of this information has already been said and is, I believe this audience is very much aware of them, but I will try to make it a little bit more contextual to the languages that we studied, which are Afan Oromo, Tigrinya, and Amharic, 3 languages spoken in Ethiopia as well as Eritrea. So Wikipedia is a free encyclopedia available in over 300 languages and has over 191 million articles in total. And the vision statement for Wikipedia is to be a platform where every single person on the planet is given free access to the sum of all human knowledge. And despite this really wonderful vision, not all languages are represented the same on the platform. Particularly low resource languages suffer in terms of quantity. So there are around 300 articles in Tigrinya Wikipedia, and for comparison, in Arabic, for example, we have over 650,000 articles. In English, it is over 5.7 million articles. And there's also a low number of new articles per day and active editor count for lower resource languages. In terms of quality, we see that a lot of these articles that are available in these languages are short, redundant, or simply stubs. The first screenshot is from Tigrinya Wikipedia for the title Tarik, which means history. And it's just one word, and it's the name of an individual, and it's in English. So you see a lot of these types of content on these Wikipedias. And reminder that there are 300 articles in total for Tigrinya, and this is one of them. The bottom screenshot shows an article from the Amharic Wikipedia for the title Ye Ethiopia Tarik, which means Ethiopian history. And it is one long sentence describing the location of a town in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. So there's a mismatch between the title and the content. The content itself is is just one long sentence. So there's a lot of quality issues within these articles. Zooming out, we see that a lot of the articles that are available in these languages have just one sentence, whereas for comparison, we see that Arabic has a peak at around 10 sentences per article. And also looking at the maximum number of sentences that are available in an individual article, Arabic goes as far as 10,000 and above, whereas the lower resource languages, they cap out at around hundreds or thousands of sentences per article. We also see that there are relevance issues for Wikipedia articles in these languages. So this is a screenshot from the main page of Amharic Wikipedia at the time that we were writing the paper. And this article is about the Big Mac burger, but there is no McDonald's restaurant in Ethiopia. And this article about a very famous community in Ethiopia called Auramba is available in 6 languages, none of which are Ethiopian. Side note, if you're interested in a community that has no gender norms in Ethiopia, please check out the article about Auramba, because I think they're really cool. So to recap, we see that Wikipedia articles for these languages suffer in terms of quantity, quality, as well as relevance. And we wanted to understand why people have a challenge in contributing to this platform in these languages. So to answer our research question, we conducted 2 studies. We first collected the forum discussion data from the 3 Wikipedias, Amharic, Tigrinya, and Afaan Oromo. And we also conducted a contextual inquiry study with 14 novice contributors, where we observed them attempt to author an article in their language on Wikipedia. And we used inductive thematic analysis for both of these studies to understand what type of challenges emerge. So I'm going to pause here to tell you what we were expecting going into the study. So the study started because I actually wanted to train models for Amharic and Tigrinya, and I decided to go to Wikipedia to get data, but then I quickly realized when there's a very few number of articles, but also there were quality issues, including sometimes toxicity and hate speech within the data sets. So when we started the study, we were thinking, oh, we're going to find out exactly what is wrong with the Wikipedia interface that's making it impossible for these languages to create quality and quantity data. And the talk would have been very different if things went as we expected. I would just come here and tell you what is wrong with Wikipedia, and we would solve it, and we'll all be happy. But to our slight surprise, I guess, it's not just Wikipedia's interface that presents a challenge, but also external language support tools that contributors use as they're writing these articles, as well as social political challenges that I will highlight in a few slides. So let's start with Wikipedia's interface. So we observed a set of challenges. I'll only mention a few of them, but please feel free to read our paper for more details. The first challenge that I'll mention is that interface instructions themselves are in mixed languages for these Wikipedia pages. So this is a screenshot from one of our participants who is being told that his IP address is blocked by the Wikipedia cybersecurity measures. And the instruction starts out in Tigrinya saying, you cannot create an article on this page due to the following reasons, but then proceeds to list the reasons in English. So if this person could not understand English, there's no way for them to know why this is happening to them. Second set of challenges that we observed with the Wikipedia interface is with people trying to get their non-Latin keyboard to work properly with the Wikipedia interface. And this presented a challenge both in people writing, but also in people reading in a non-Latin script. So in this interaction, the designer is responding to a complaint that people are not able to read Amharic articles on Wikipedia in a decent way. And the complaint is that the font is bold. And the designer says that they could not read Amharic, but that the font does not come with a bold variant, so they're not really sure what the contributors want them to fix. So as one user tries to simulate that their interaction is very distracting, and it appears as if they're reading a whole English essay in a bold font. Another user chimes in to say that it is very difficult to read small size text in an actual article, and that where there are numbers in the article, they appear very small as compared to the surrounding text. So because the designer is not able to understand the language, it takes a significant back and forth before they're able to understand what the problem is and go to resolve it. So the problem here that the users are trying to describe is that the stroke, the width of the stroke of each character is too wide. So it appears very distracting when they're trying to read these articles. The second challenge, the third challenge that I'll mention with Wikipedia's interface is that of different spellings or misspellings, which sometimes lead to duplicate articles. As one of the forum contributors on the forum discussions for Amharic Wikipedia states, there are 182 ways of writing as a Haile Selassie, just because of the different characters that you could use or the different spellings that you have for these two words. In Afan Oromo, we saw that different spellings due to dialect differences and sometimes misspellings entirely lead to duplicate articles. And this results in users not being able to find articles when they search and also waste editors' time identifying duplicate articles and removing them. So now I will talk about external language support tools and the challenges with that that contributors face. So the first that I'll talk about is, again, non-Latin keyboards and writing on with a non-Latin script. So we found that across the 11 participants who used a non-Latin keyboard, there were 7 different keyboards that people used. So some people wrote on their phones, some people wrote on their computers. So that by itself resulted in very different interactions. So here I'm highlighting screenshots from one of our participants who was using his phone to create an article on Amharic Wikipedia, and he's using the Ge'ez keyboard on his phone, and then he switches to the Latin keyboard because he wants to add the word muse in parentheses, but then he forgets to switch his keyboard back to Ge'ez, so continues to write Amharic with Latin characters. When he realizes what he's doing, he erases the Latin characters, switches his keyboard back to Ge'ez, and then proceeds to write with Ge'ez letters. So there's a significant back and forth and context switching that people have to do when they're interacting with online interfaces in non-Latin keyboards or that use non-Latin scripts. The second tool that I'll highlight here is machine translation. So our participants found that machine translation tools are still too literal for these languages. So here, one of our participants is trying to translate a proverb, and the English translation for it is "we ran out of grain and water," which is a very literal translation. But as our participant noted, an average Amharic speaker would tell you that this proverb actually means our time, which is usually romantic, has come to an end. So these tools lose the cultural context when you're using them for these languages. A second interaction with machine translation is this participant who's trying to translate a paragraph about a famous Ethiopian ruler who is Muslim into Amharic. There are several errors in this translation, but I'll only highlight 2 of them. So first, currently, as it is, machine translation tools and their interaction just copy over years. So in going from the English text to the Amharic text, the year that the ruler came into power is simply copied over, but without indication of what calendar system that this is in. If I don't know that this is coming from an English text, when I read Amharic text, my default thinking would be the Ethiopian calendar. So this would be off by about 7 or 8 years. And the second error that I'll highlight here is that machine translation tools also sometimes exhibit toxicity in their output. So here the phrase Mahfuz, who wedded his daughter to him, was mistranslated to the ruler marrying his own daughter. And a mistranslation that our participant was particularly worried about because the ruler was Muslim and they were worried that it would reinforce certain stereotypes. Machine translation tools also, maybe unsurprisingly, exhibit large amounts of gender bias. So here our participant is saying it has Abba or father sinke. We don't have that. We have Hadda or mother sinke. When translating an article about a women's rights organization within the Oromo culture into Afan Oromo from English. And what is interesting about this interaction, at least for me, is that it's not the pronouns or the verbs or the suffix, etc., that is changed in the translation in terms of gender, but the actual noun mother is changed to father, which is very, very interesting and perhaps slightly ironic, thinking that the whole article is about a women's rights organization. There were also complaints from our participants about the limits of input modalities. So this participant is highlighting how writing is confined to a handful of languages, and even within those languages, there's further marginalization of women, indicating that when we are focused on text-only interactions, we risk ignoring the stories that are passed orally about women, about marginalized ethnic groups, religious groups, etc. So now I'll talk briefly about social political challenges that we observed. So the first is the lack of availability of resources or scholarly work about these communities and in their languages. So resources about these communities either do not exist. So this participant is saying we have nothing, we don't even have suggestions, after attempting to find articles on Tigrinya Wikipedia about African rulers that they wanted to edit. Or sometimes if they exist, they are written by Western scholars and usually have colonial viewpoints. So this participant is saying, see, it's the heralds of the world, as they were scrolling through the citations in a Wikipedia article about an Ethiopian king. In relation to resources, the other finding that we had was that sometimes participants just could not find scholarly work to support the articles that they want to write about. So bringing back this screenshot of the long sentence about the town in Tigray region, one of our participants wanted to edit this article. So he went on Google and searched for the name of the town in Amharic, followed by the name of the town and the location, the region that the town is located in English. And the top result from Google was a news article about the war that was happening in the Tigray region at the time. And the people also asked section had questions about the war. What is not in the search result is the town that the participant is searching for. So next, the participant removed the English description and only searched for the Amharic name of the town. Now the top result is a YouTube video that has a word that sounds like the name of the town, but has completely unrelated meaning. So the translation for the description that you see on the screen, the description for the video, the YouTube video that was returned is a wife who appeals to me and obeys my orders, which has nothing to do at all with the town that the participant is searching for. So next, the participant added the name of the region as well as which particular direction it is located in, all in Amharic, and he got a no results found page. Then he copied over a description from the Wikipedia article itself. He again got a no results found page. So at this point, the participant decided that he's going to change the topic of his article and wrote about something else. And one final point that I'll make about social political challenges is that of paywalls and financial barriers that prevent people from accessing scholarly work. So this participant, who is a lecturer at an Ethiopian university, is highlighting how they do not have access to certain publications that are protected behind paywalls, which reinforces like this chicken and egg problem of like they can't produce scholarly work because they don't have access to scholarly work, and then the cycle just continues. So this timeline perhaps encapsulate all the challenges that I've mentioned so far. So this is a timeline of one of our participants who is attempting to write an article on Tigrinya Wikipedia. So throughout this session, this participant struggles with getting his non-Latin keyboard to work properly with the Wikipedia interface. He is constantly stuck trying to edit pages to links to pages that don't exist or stubs within the Tigrinya Wikipedia. He is blocked by the Wikipedia cybersecurity measures because he was using a VPN service. Which brings us to the social political challenges. He was using VPN because at the time that we conducted the session, platforms such as YouTube and Telegram were blocked in Ethiopia because of political reasons. So he used VPN in order to access those platforms, but that went against the Wikipedia cybersecurity measures, and so he had his IP address blocked. So after taking 2 hours and 10 minutes, this participant was not able to get his article published on Wikipedia. So I've talked about all the challenges that exist for these languages. So what are some design opportunities and how could we improve interaction for speakers of these languages? We have a set of design recommendations within our paper, but I'll highlight a few of them here. For improving Wikipedia's interface, one thing that we recommend is making explicit what dialect a particular article is written in. So that we don't have this interaction where people are like constantly overwriting each other's articles just because they're not aware of like what dialect it is in, it is originally written in. The second opportunity is to use tools such as language identification to recommend to editors articles that might have a mix of different languages in them. We highlight in our paper that like sometimes this might be intentional, so we shouldn't automatically be removing articles that are in mixed languages, but rather bring them up to editors so that they make those final decisions. The other opportunity here, which actually came about from our forum discussion analysis, is sometimes you have editors who don't speak the language but are from the community. So this is usually people who are born in the diaspora, who have interest in growing these Wikipedias. And usually what they would do is bring articles from English Wikipedia that are about the community and ask somebody else to either write an article from the start or translate the article that exists in English Wikipedia. So there's opportunity to augment this interaction with automated recommendations of articles that are about the community, but are written in other languages, being recommended for the local Wikipedia editors. In terms of language support tools, we recommend focusing our efforts not just on text-based interactions, but for example, speech recognition systems, but also thinking about vocal or audio-only archives, so that we are closer to how these communities traditionally preserve their knowledge, which is through oral traditions. In terms of machine translation, we call for a more human-centered machine translation interaction, for example, highlighting named entities such as dates, names of people, places, locations, etc., so that people pay more attention to how those entities are translated across the different languages. Using techniques as simple as back translation to see if toxic output has been produced by the machine translation systems, and studying very explicitly how gender is represented in these languages so that we build more gender-inclusive technologies. I will reflect on this question that we grappled with a lot while working on this project, which is, what if community members just don't want their knowledge on Wikipedia or the internet more generally? What if that's the reason that we're not seeing representation for these languages? And we argue in our work that it should be the choice of the community members to make this decision whether or not their knowledge should be on there, and not our design shortcomings that make these decisions for them. Because as we've seen, even when people want to contribute, there are so many different barriers that are preventing them from doing so. So as technologists and as people who want to improve these interactions, we should resolve those challenges and let people decide whether or not they want to put their data on there. So with that, I will conclude my talk with this quote from Ruha Benjamin, that technology succeeds by excluding some groups in taking part in its design, intent, implementation, and results, and reminding us that it's not just Wikipedia's interface that's a challenge, but also social political issues, as well as external language support tools that all prevent people from creating quality and quantity content in lower resource languages. And please read the paper for more details, and I'm happy to take any questions. And also let me know if I should stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Helena. I think you can keep your screen in case you there are specific slides to address questions. So I'm not hearing anything from YouTube while the room formulates their questions and the YouTube channel as well. I have a question for you. So you started the presentation saying these projects started by you saying, okay, I'm going to train models on Wikipedia in these languages. What is your conclusion about this? What can we do about this? Is this safe to do? Does this make sense? How far are we from having effective AI models to serve these communities?
Yeah, so I am okay. How do I say this? I will call myself out, right? Like, that was a very solutionist mindset for me to have to start this project with. Like, I wanted to train models, but there's no data, so I'm going to understand why there's no data. Because I work in the intersection of HCI and NLP, and like my HCI brain is the more like human-centered by virtue of being HCI. In that, like, we shouldn't make these interactions better just so we have more data to train on. We should make these interactions better because the community who wants to preserve their knowledge is not able to do so, right? So this question of like, it should be the communities who decide, it was really a reflection on myself and how I was approaching the problem, but also just like NLP in general of like, yeah, these tools, like the NLP tools, are not working very great for these languages currently, but we shouldn't make interactions better just so that we can then take that data to, like, it's just there's a fallacy there that's happening in the chain of thought. But I think that it is also important that we have quality content for these languages on Wikipedia, because like, yes, for the community members, but also in how we build these models, because we are seeing repeatedly, right, like how the models can be toxic, the models can be exclusionary, the models can be like, are not representative of different cultures, etc. So there definitely is a ripple effect in what is represented online, specifically, more so specifically on Wikipedia, I would say, and how these models perform across different social groups. But yeah, like it's important that we improve the interactions just for the sake of the communities.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing this perspective. I think we have Diego next.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. Super interesting. I think I found super interesting your explanations about the limitations of machine translation. I think this is a field that nowadays there's a lot of confusion in many people thinking that it's kind of solved problem, and we see in under-resourced languages, and sometimes in languages that are not that under-resourced, but we see those problems, and I think you made a great work showing that. But I want to ask about the mentions you made about different dialects in the same project. I'm interested in this because this happens not only in under-resourced languages, but in medium-sounding languages, where you have where the language is extended in many countries, and there are different ways to express some ideas. Different communities fight different kind of rules. In some, what I've seen in Spanish, for example, is that sometimes the article says for some concepts explained, like in Spain is like this, in Latin America is like that. That is also a generalization because it changed from country to country. And I understand that when dialects or written language is different enough, usually what happens is that the projects are split, and you have different projects for different ways to speak in a language that is very similar. What do you think? You put a recommendation there about saying the article is written in a specific dialect. Do you think? Can you elaborate more on that, or you think that it's necessary that the article is full written in one dialect, and if there's person from other community, what they should do, they should create another version of the same article in another dialect, or you think that there are some options for different dialects to live in the same place and try to find a style that is neutral enough for having that and for making the project to grow? No?
Yeah, I am so interested in like this concept of understanding the disparities in language technology just generally across dialects. And I will say that, like, in the study that we did, right, when people logged into, for example, Tigrinya Wikipedia, sometimes, like, I think the distinction between dialects and languages is, this is a personal take, but it's like slightly arbitrary, in that, like, not everybody feels like a different dialect is the same language. So I had some people who logged into the page of the main page of, like, Tigrinya Wikipedia, for example, and immediately going, this is not my language, even though they can understand it, but because of, like, the different words, the different spellings, etc., they're like, I know that, like, I can understand what this is saying, but it's not my language. So you have this sense of, like, not feeling represented just because it's in a different dialect, but it's all like classified under Tigrinya at the end of the day, right? So you'll have, like, one Tigrinya Wikipedia, and the recommendation for using, like, being explicit about which dialect an article or is written in, for example, it comes from, I believe there was, I'm not sure which language it is, but it's one of the higher resource languages that actually does this, where they make it, like, they have different versions of an article in different dialects, and then there's, like, at the top it tells you what dialect it is in. So the same way, like, you click on the different languages and, like, you get a list, you can get, like, a list of, like, the different dialects. I read this 2 years ago, so please forgive me if I am getting it wrong in terms of the details, but I know something like that exists in a higher resource language. So my recommendation, or the recommendation that we make in the paper is practically that, right? Like, because sometimes it's the terms that are different, and dialect issues actually not just in articles, but in also like the words that are used for interfaces, like edit, delete, and stuff like that. Those are different across dialects sometimes. So some of my participants just did not understand what the words meant. So they had to switch to the English Wikipedia and read what that button does in English, and then say, oh, like, okay, now it makes sense what this is trying to say, just because of like the different dialects that they were using. So I think there are definitely a lot of things that we could do in terms of improving experiences of like different dialect speakers.
Thank you, Helena. I think we have time for one question from Leila.
Sure. Thank you so much, Miriam. Thanks, Helena, for the presentation. One comment I'll make first, and then I'll just invite some connections and questions. My comment is that, of course, like among us and folks who are joining us right now in YouTube, we are primarily researchers, and we're talking about like research aspects of this work. I want to say that if you are from a low resource language Wikipedia community, if you're seeing these charts and tables and you're seeing, big counts and big gaps between like the number of counts between maybe a language that you're contributing to and the high number of articles in larger languages like Wikipedia, please don't take that as a judgment of, the work that is happening in your language. There are a lot of important work that is happening in lower resource languages that is of course, important, and the work that you're doing is extremely valuable in these smaller and lower resource languages. The question that I had was, there are a few efforts and initiatives that are happening that I want to kind of draw together here and see whether we can do something with these with regards to your presentation, Helena. One is the example that you had around, let's say, the dates, when in translation the dates get messed up. My mind is with wiki functions within the Wikimedia space, like if wiki functions is at a stage that like it can convert, actually it has more functions and it can convert, let's say something like dates more easily from one calendar to another or from one context to another. I would expect that some of these challenges that we see with kind of translations to get resolved. So if any of you are more familiar with wiki functions and want to draw some connections and conclusions, please do. And the other topic that is kind of top of mind right now for me is the article country model that within the team, within the research team, Isaac Johnson has been developing. And Helena, you mentioned this kind of recommendations for supporting editors finding information that may be missing or is already exists in other languages related to their country and context. Are there things that we can do by drawing some connections between existing for projects such as wiki functions, article country model? And Isaac is not on the call, but there are others on the call who can comment on that. Miriam, if you want to chime in on that front, if you see connections, or anyone else. And Helena, looking forward to hearing also your thoughts and reactions. Thank you.
Is anyone chiming in, or should I continue?
You can go.
Okay, great. Yeah, I will first piggyback on the comment that you made, Leila, that like it is so important to take contextual, like the context that these studies are conducted under and how they apply to your own context. So if the same study, for example, was the exact same study was conducted by Sejal, the previous speaker, the results would be very, very different. So yeah, like none of this is to discount anything that anybody is doing, but to say like in this context for these speakers and for these particular participants and the culture and the language and the climate that they come from, these are the challenges that are out there. So I hope that everybody interprets it that way. And I guess coming to the existing tools or like existing projects, I think structured machine translation, definitely there's a room for that. I'm not too familiar with wiki functions to make any comments right now. And I'll also perhaps borrow an answer from the previous speaker on that. This was conducted 2 years ago, like the actual study itself. So things might have changed significantly since then. I know that the articles in the Tigrinya Wikipedia, I've seen a few articles that have been edited and have a lot more content now. I know that some of the participants that I spoke to and worked with on this project have actually gone on to create content in these languages. So it's not to say that like all of these challenges currently exist, but it's interesting to see how, especially with the language support tools, for me as an NLP researcher, how I could make tools that are contextually relevant. So as Diego mentioned, like machine translation is assumed to be solved, but as we see, it's not. So I have current ongoing projects on improving machine translation for these languages. So with that, I'm excited to learn about other Wikimedia projects that might relate to the findings and how they could be helpful.
Thank you so much, Helena. There are a few more questions from YouTube. Unfortunately, our time is up today. I want to thank you both for the presentations, and really, I can't imagine how hard it is to do this kind of multilingual research. So thank you for the extra effort and for bringing it to us with such a clear, beautiful presentation and findings. I think we can wrap up this showcase for today. I'll pass it on to Kinneret for some final remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. And thanks everyone for joining. And for those of you who asked questions in the YouTube chat, again, we suggest contacting the speakers to follow up with more questions if you have them. I especially want to thank again our speakers, Sajal and Elena, for their contributions and for giving these talks today. The Wikimedia Research Showcase is also made possible thanks to a coordination team that includes my colleagues Miriam and Eli, so thank you for this. Thank you also, Diego, for monitoring the chat and passing on questions today. Our next showcase is going to happen on December 11th, and our theme is AI for Wikipedia. Bob West from EPFL and Monica Lamb from Stanford will present their lab's work on AI to support the work of Wikipedia editors. So we hope you will join us then. We're looking forward to seeing you. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we're done.